Good morning. The following Zoom session is being recorded and will appear later today on my YouTube channel, Math with Mayo. When you participate in the Zoom meeting, if you do not wish for your picture or your name to be made public, please leave the video off and use an alias name. If you have questions during the meeting but do not wish to speak, email me at bmayo@ybcc.edu and I will respond as soon as I can. So today we're going to cover section 8.5, absolute value equations. But first, are there any questions from section 8.4 from yesterday? Anybody?
No questions.
All right.
No, I don't have any yet.
I do want to mention, I mentioned this, Greg, before you got here, to Daniela. So the Math 93 class is covering much of the same material. So if you ever want to see like another video on the playlist on YouTube, the Math 93 playlist has, for instance, today's lesson 8.5, I did for them a couple of days ago. I tend to do pretty much the same kind of problems, but there might be slightly different ones, just if you need another set of videos to watch. But anyway, all right, well, let's get started. And we're going to go to 8.5 and close that up. So let's say we've got a number line. And on that number line, we have 7 and -7. What is the distance from 7 to 0 on the number line? How many units? What's the distance there?
7.
7. Good. What's the distance from -7 to 0 on the number line? The distance?
7.
7, right. And so what we've got is absolute value is the distance from a number to 0 on the number line. So the absolute value of 7 is 7. The absolute value of -7 is 7. Absolute value is positive with one exception, and that is, how far is it from 0 to 0? Well, that would be just 0, which is not positive or negative. So an absolute value is either positive, or in the case of the absolute value of 0, the answer is 0. Okay, that's just sort of a quick refresher about absolute value. All right, now, go back to this example. Suppose I said the absolute value of x is 7. Okay, what value or values could x take on and make this true?
7.
7, okay, so x could be 7. Is there any other value of x that would still make this true? The absolute value of some number would be equal to 7. Think back to our last example.
Would it be 0?
No.
-7.
There you go. In other words, x could be 7 or x could be -7. So if the absolute value of x is 7, x either has to be this number or its opposite. Okay, let's see if you're getting that. Let's say the absolute value of x equals 4. Then x would equal 4, or x could equal
-4.
right, because what is the absolute value of 4? 4. What is the absolute value of -4? 4. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay. What is, if the absolute value of x is 17, we could say x is what?
17 or -17.
Right. So when we have an absolute value equal to a positive number, there are two possible scenarios. The absolute value, the inside, either has to equal the outside, or the inside equals the opposite of, and by the outside, I should say, on the other side of the equation. Okay?
Yes.
So the absolute value of x plus 3 equals 5. That means that x plus 3 equals 5, or x plus 3 equals the opposite of 5. Because again, if what's inside of here equals 5, and we take its absolute value, we get 5. If what's inside here equals -5, we take its absolute value, and again, we get 5. But now we need to do some solving further. If x plus 3 equals 5, subtracting 3, we get x equals 2. If x plus 3 equals -5, subtracting, we get x equals -8. Let's check our answers. If x equals 2, we would get this, which would be this, which would be that. So x equals 2 is a correct solution. If we get x equals -8, we get this, which is this, which is that, which is also true. So again, we need values of x that make the inside equal to that, or the inside equal to the opposite of that. Because when we take their absolute values, we get a positive value in both cases, again, unless it's 0. Still doing okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. (2x minus 4 equals 18). Excuse me, the absolute value of 2x minus 4 equals 18. So either 2x minus 4 equals 18, or 2x minus 4 equals the opposite of 18, or -18. If 2x minus 4 equals 18, to solve for x, we add 4, then we divide by 2, and we get x equals 11. If 2x minus 4 equals -18, we add 4, 2x equals -14, we divide by 2, x equals -7. Let's check our work. If x is 11, the absolute value of 2 times 11 minus 4 equals 18. Well, what is 2 times 11?
22.
22. And what's 22 minus 4?
18.
So here we'd get the absolute value of 18 is 18. The absolute value of 18 is 18, so 18 equals 18. X equals 11 checks. Let's try x equals -7. 2 times -7 minus 4. What's 2 times -7?
-14.
What's -14 minus 4?
-18.
So we get the absolute value of -18, which is 18. So again, it checks. So far, so good?
Yep.
All right. Now, let's say we've got an absolute value equal to 0. Well, then you'd have what's inside equals 0, or what's inside equals the opposite of 0. But wait a minute, isn't the opposite of 0 the same thing as 0?
Yes.
So when we have an absolute value equal to 0, we really only have one case to consider, because the other case will result in the same answer. So here we'd subtract 4, x is -4. Let's check our work. -4 plus 4, 0, 0. So that. So backing up for a minute, if we have an absolute value by itself equal to a positive number, there are 2 equations to consider. If we have an absolute value equal to a 0, there is just one equation to consider. All right. Let's say we've got an absolute value equal to -8. Okay, so that means x minus 4 equals -8, or x minus 4 equals the opposite of -8. If x minus 4 equals -8, adding 4 to both sides, we get x equals -4. If x minus 4 equals the opposite of -8, that's like x minus 4 equals what? +8, the opposite of -8. Add 4 to both sides, x is 12. Let's check our work. Let's take this answer. We'd have -4 minus 4 equals -8. That is the absolute value of -4 minus 4, which would be the absolute value of -8. What is the absolute value of -8?
8.
Does 8 equal -8?
No.
No. So that one doesn't work, does it? All right, let's take x equals 12. We would get 12 minus 4, absolute value, equals -8. 12 minus 4 is 8. The absolute value of 8 is 8. 8 doesn't equal -8, so there's no solution. Okay, now, an absolute value in and of itself can't equal a negative number. All right, so we're not going to get an answer there. There's going to be no solution. Or I think that WebAssign says something like does not exist, but when you get in there and look at it, you'll see that's what's going on there. Okay. Now, let's say we've got something like this. 2 times the quantity x minus 4 minus 8 equals 20. So we've got a bunch of stuff. We've got that absolute value term on the left, but there's a bunch of extra stuff. There's a 2 coefficient out front, and there's a -8 constant term. Before we do anything else, we want to isolate the absolute value term. So my first moves are going to be to add 8 to both sides. Then divide both sides by 2. Now I've got my absolute value equal to a positive number. So I'm going to get x minus 4 equals 14, or x minus 4 equals the opposite of 14, or -14. Any questions so far?
So when there's a number in front of the absolute value, it's as if it's being multiplied?
Yes, because if you have a number in front of a grouping symbol, whether it's absolute value bars, parentheses, brackets, braces, you're multiplying. So it's like as if there's an implied multiplication symbol there.
Oh, okay, got it.
What you don't want to do is distribute the 2. Just get rid of it by dividing both sides. Okay. So now back to this x minus 4 equals 14. We add 4, we get x equals 18. X minus 4 equals -14. We add 4, we get x equals -10. All right. If x is 18, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to erase the stuff here in the middle to give me some room to write. Okay. So if x equals 18, we get 2 times the absolute value of 18 minus 4 minus 8 equals 20. What's 18 minus 4?
14.
14. What's the absolute value of 14?
14.
So we get 2 times 14 minus 8 equals 20. 28 minus 8 equals 20. 20 equals 20. So x equals 18 checks. Let's go back and let's take x equals -10. We'd get 2 times the absolute value of -10 minus 4 minus 8 equals 20. What is -10 minus 4?
-14.
-14. What's the absolute value of -14?
14.
All right, sorry, I was trying to skip a step there. So we get 28 minus 8 equals 20. Okay? So if you have an expression or an equation with one absolute value term, isolate that absolute value first. Get rid of any coefficient out front, get rid of any extra terms, get them all shoved over to the other side, and then go with your 2 equations as we've just done. All right. Now, what if we've got 2 absolute values? in the same equation. For instance, 4x minus 7, that is the absolute value of 4x minus 7, equals the absolute value of 3x minus 21. If we have two absolute values, we want to separate them, which is what's done here. If they had both been on the same side of the equation, I would have moved one by subtracting it from both sides of the equation to get it over to the other side. All right. Now, if we go through and we look at this, we could take what's inside there equals what's inside of there. That would be one possibility. Or we could take what's inside the first one equals the opposite of what's inside the second one. That's another possibility. Or we could take the opposite of what's inside the first one equals what's inside the second one. Or the opposite of what's inside the first one equals the opposite of what's inside the second one. Because remember, a number and its opposite are going to have the same absolute value. So I've got these four different equations. But let's do some inspection. Let's take a look at this equation and that equation. If I took this top equation and I multiplied both sides by -1, wouldn't I get the bottom equation?
Yes.
So therefore, this is redundant. I don't need it. It's going to give me the same answer. Now let's take a look at, let's see here, these two equations, okay? If I take this first equation and I multiply both sides by -1, I'd have a negative outside the front of the first or the left side and a positive outside the second side or the right side. So again, this second equation is redundant of this first one. So my point in all this is that we only really have two examples or two equations. And so let me go back and recopy this. Oops, let's try that again. And I've got 4x minus 7 equals the absolute value of 3x minus 21. So I'm going to take what's inside of one equals what's inside of the other, or what's inside of one equals the opposite of what's inside the other. That will give me the two possibilities. Be careful. You're taking the opposite of that entire quantity. Don't just write it like this. It's the opposite of all of that. So you're ultimately going to distribute that subtraction sign. Okay? So now, solving these two equations, the first one, I'll subtract 3x and I get x minus 7 equals -21. I'll add 7 and I get x equals -14. The second one, 4x minus 7, I'll distribute the negative and get -3x plus 21. I'll add 3x to both sides of the equation. 7x minus 7 equals 21. I'll add 7 to both sides of the equation. 7x equals 28. Divide both sides by 7. X equals 4. All right, let's check our work. Once again, I'm going to erase some stuff that's there to leave room to check my work so I don't have to go to a next page. If x is -14, we would get the absolute value of 4 times -14 minus 7 equals the absolute value of 3 times -14 minus 21. What is 4 times -14? That would be -56. What's -56 minus 7 more? That would be -63. What's the absolute value of -63? That would be 63. On the right side, 3 times -14 is -42. Negative 42 minus 21 is negative 63, and the absolute value of negative 63 is 63. So x equals negative 14, checks. All right with that?
Yes, it's just taking me a while to copy it all down.
No problem. I shall wait. Let me know when you're ready. We'll go on. Or anytime you need me to slow down, just say, whoa, hold on, slow down there.
Okay.
I'm
done
not going
copying.
anywhere. We're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Again, I'm going to erase this information here so that I have room to check my work for the x equals positive 4. So if x equals positive 4, we would get the absolute value of 4 times 4 minus 7 equals the absolute value of 3 times 4 minus 21. What's 4 times 4?
16.
So this becomes 16 minus 7. What's 16 minus 7?
9.
What's the absolute value of 9?
9.
Okay. What's 3 times 4?
12.
What's 12 minus 21?
Negative 9.
And what's the absolute value of negative 9?
9.
And it checks. And there you have it. All righty. Let's see here. I'm looking for a particular one. I'll just make something up maybe, or, well, let's see here. This will work. Negative 10 times the absolute value of 16x plus 4 minus 3 equals negative 3. Now, be careful. You might look at this problem and say, aha, I can just hear you now saying, aha, the right side is a negative answer, a negative number. So it's not going to be, there's not going to be any solution. Wait a minute. We have to isolate the absolute value first, because before we do, or after we do that, that negative 3 might not be a negative 3 anymore. Let's see what happens. Okay. So back to the original. Let's get rid of this circle there. Okay. So the first thing I would do would be to add 3 to both sides, which gives me this. Oh, it's no longer negative, is it? It's 0. But I'm not done. What would the next move be?
Divide it by negative 10.
Good. So then I'm going to get the absolute value of 16x plus 4 equals, what's 0 divided by a non-zero number?
No solution.
0.
0. Okay,
Yeah.
dividing by 0 is undefined, but 0 divided by a non-zero number is fine. That's equal to 0, okay? All right, so I'm going to have 16x plus 4 equals 0. That's going to be my only equation, because if I take 16x plus 4 equal to the opposite of 0, it's still equal to 0, right? So after we did got rid of all that extra fluff and got it down to just an absolute value, it was set equal to 0. So now I'm going to subtract 4 and then divide by 16. So x equals negative 1/4. Reducing negative 4 over 16. All right, let's take that and check our work and plug that in. Negative 10 times the absolute value of 16 times negative 1/4 plus 4 minus 3 equals negative 3. What is 16 times negative 1/4?
Negative 4.
Right, so that piece right there is negative 4. What's negative 4 plus 4?
0.
0. What's the absolute value of 0?
0.
What's negative 10 times 0?
0.
What's 0 minus 3?
-3.
And negative 3 equals negative 3. So it checks. Okay. Any questions there? All right. Let's take a look at another example. Let's say I've got the absolute value of 2x plus 7 equals the absolute value of 2x minus 9. So I've got two absolute value expressions and they are separate, which is good. So one of my equations is going to be 2x plus 7 equals 2x minus 9. And the other one is going to be 2x plus 7 equals the opposite of 2x minus 9. All right. Solving the left equation, well, if I subtract 2x from both sides, I get 7 equals 9. Well, 7 doesn't equal 9. So this leads to no solution. But let's take a look at the other equation. Here I've got 2x plus 7 equals negative 2x plus 9. I'll add 2x to both sides of the equation. 4x plus 7 equals 9. Subtract 7 from both sides. 4x equals 2. Divide by 4, x equals 2/4 or 1/2. I'll pause briefly while you get caught up there, and then we'll check our work. This is what's known as ketchup with mayo. My bad. All right. We good to go on yet, or still writing?
Yeah, I'm good.
We're good. Greg, you still good? You good?
I'm good.
Okay, here we go. So the absolute value of 2 times 1/2 plus 7 equals the absolute value of 2 times 1/2 minus 9. What's 2 times 1/2?
1.
What's 1 plus 7?
8.
What's the absolute value of 8?
8.
What's 2 times 1/2?
1 again.
What's 1 minus 9?
-8.
What's the absolute value of negative 8?
8.
So we have one solution. So it would be wrong to say no solution or solution does not exist, because there is one solution. This led us to a dead end, but there was still one solution. All right. Let's see here. How about this one? Negative 75 equals the absolute value of x plus 4. Any thoughts?
Is that undefined or no answer?
Well, you'd say it doesn't exist or no solution, okay? Because an absolute value can't equal a negative number. So no solution or like that, okay? Or sometimes WebAssign, it'll say you're supposed to write does not exist. It'll tell you in the instructions. Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty much it. So if you don't have any further questions, we'll call it quits for the day.
No, I don't have any questions.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop the recording.